Rise up, the Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. The crew is back, and now it's time to rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. Rise up, rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. The crew is back, and now it's time to rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. Rise up.
And welcome back to the D's on Fire podcast. A lot to talk about. I guess we should start with our thoughts and prayers going out to Halil Barre for his health condition that's going to keep him out indefinitely. I think this is pure speculation on my part. In fact, I've reached out to sources to try to confirm these speculations, and I've gotten stonewalled that they're not able to disclose anything, even if they did find out the answers. But I think that's the reason for the light blue hearts on the jerseys is for him. And there was an Instagram story post that he made that kind of alluded to that fact, because people were drawing hearts for him on the board and stuff. So I think that's related to his health condition, which is obviously scary that if it is something that's involving the heart. So many athletes have dealt with those issues. Some have been able to come back and play from them. Some have just ended their careers. But ultimately, it's just scary because you want them to be healthy, and you never know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, no doubt. Hope just him as a person gets better, excluding the basketball side. Hopefully he does get better to a point where he plays, that this isn't like career driven or anything. And yeah, hopefully he gets better. That's pretty much all you can say at this point.
And I will add the good news that it doesn't seem to be impacting his involvement with the team too much, aside from him not practicing and playing. He is around. He's still being present with the guys. And Day talked about it in the post-game presser that they're a family on and off the court. They hang out all the time. They're each other's brothers. So that's a good sign that he's still being involved and not isolating himself from the team, as you do when you're rehabbing and not really able to participate sometimes. So
yeah, that's a big plus when, like, on the mental side of things for him specifically, just feeling that camaraderie and team like feel, even though he's not out on the court like he would want to be. So that's probably helping him out a ton, and Day and Brewer and guys like that don't even know it.
Yeah. I think Kareem Rozier, who had an article about him this past week, or I think it was this past week, where their Post-Gazette did a piece on him talking about how much of a leader he is as a freshman and how rare that is to see. So, I mean, it was nothing new. It's been a focal point where he's a team captain as a freshman. So it's good to see that he's still holding that role as he appears to in just about every game. The other news that we want to touch on before diving into the game, Coach D got his 500th win. A lot of love went his way. Pretty great video with LeBron James being the headliner, Shaka Smart, Coach Bob Huggins, many former players and staff members giving him his congratulations, talking about how much they loved being a part of it and how they're going to cherish those memories. And of course, Zach Weiss got a role in those videos, congratulating him and really focusing on how much of a mentor he's been to young men in becoming better human beings on his piece. So all of that was nice, and it was capped off, of course, by his family members, his mom, his children, and his wife, giving their shout outs to congratulate him on 500. In his post-game presser, despite the many questions to him about it, he said he's really not going to focus on that. He's too focused on the rest of the season and getting more wins. So great news.
That's coaches speak right there.
Yeah.
That's as PMT would say, that's a football guy answer.
100%.
That's a basketball coach type answer.
And both he and Coach Drew Joyce were asked questions as well about LeBron's milestone that he got not 24 hours before basically the 500th win.
Yeah.
And Drew Joyce was there for both of those things because LeBron flew him out and hosted his high school teammates for the game, which basically told Coach Dambrot that he was definitely going to reach the milestone that night. But knowing that wasn't enough to keep him up to watch it.
I mean, I don't blame him. I couldn't stay up to watch it myself. I mean, every time with these West Coast games, I really want to watch these games. I just can't do it. I watched the first half, can't finish the second half myself.
Well, by the end of the first half, it's like 11, right?
It's probably 11 or 11:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't blame him either. He did mention his wife stayed up and watched it and woke him up to let him know that LeBron got it, and then he went right back to sleep. So
he probably I think he was more mad in that moment than happy that he was woken up. I'm just gonna take a guess.
I don't think so, but and then he did mention that he intentionally wore the LeBron sweatshirt to commemorate the achievement during the game. Yeah. So yeah, it was a stark contrast to everybody else with a nice black LeBron James hoodie.
Right.
So, yeah, other news outside of the game that was played. Adam Sandler got some shots up at Duquesne before his comedy gig across the street at PPG Paints Arena. Took some pictures with some players, even though they had finished their shoot around and were kind of just waiting to get ready for their game. And he posted a picture of the great memories of Pittsburgh, and it was led off by him at Duquesne. So just the national PR that Duquesne has gotten this past week and a half or so, ever since the Uber Eats
seriously
gag
that kicked it off. Who knew a fake gag would kick something off like this? What a week.
With them, and then LeBron. I mean, that's pretty consistent, but especially now, and Sandler, we're just rolling in the national publication.
Who doesn't like Adam Sandler?
I can't think of anybody that. There's some people that don't like some of his movies, but you don't like. There's no hate towards Adam Sandler himself.
No. Him as the yeah. I mean, you cannot like his movies. They're not for everybody. I mean, I feel like we're of the age group where those movies, like we grew up.
We were the target audience. I feel like already.
So no, you won't hear any bad words about Adam Sandler, especially after that Sixers movie over the summer. No, not from me.
Yeah, but as I've mentioned, and I tweeted out, I just want to hear him in his next interview talking about this Trey Clark kid that he balled with and how special he is.
Yeah, that would be sick. Yeah.
So,
maybe he recruits him for his next basketball movie. You never know. Never know.
I mean, he may have gone a little above Duquesne basketball players with Anthony Edwards and basically every other pro basketball player.
Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris. Was it Willie Herman Gomez?
Yeah, that was
okay. Or no, I think it was Yoncho.
Okay.
The other one. I think his name is Yoncho or something. I'm probably butchering that because has a Spanish name and I'm a stupid American, but
just call him Bo.
That's what we're gonna go with. That's what we're gonna go with.
What was Anthony Edwards' character's name? Kermit something?
Yeah. Kermit does sound. That couldn't be his first name, right? Kermit. That can't be. It can't be.
It can't be. But that was the name that came to my head for his character.
No, I think you're right. We could Google this, but I say we just leave it in the pod and people.
All right. Somebody will tweet at us. It's fine.
Yeah. Let's.
Speaking of, our Twitter is growing. We're adding some notable followers, might I add.
Wink, wink.
Shout out to the guys, and I did get some action on my latest tweet, which was a screen grab during the game of Trey Clark when he was on the bench, motioning that it was Duquesne ball and saying it was the referee moment of the game, which I agree with. I think it was. It was a great call on his part.
It's hard to argue.
And yeah, that got some love from the players and coaching staff. So that was cool. We're slowly growing, slowly. But with all of that, we might as well jump into the game.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
You and I both agree that this was a complete performance, and it realistically the past two games, it's hard to take them away. This has just been probably the best basketball Duquesne's played all year. These past two games.
Yeah, I would 100% agree.
And again, it is so nice that it came off of a week break where they were able to refocus and just seemingly realize they have all the potential in the world and unlocked it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think these are the two best games. I think this one was better than the GW game. Basically for reasons that we didn't shoot the absolute lights out in this game. We shot well, but we didn't shoot ungodly. But still won by over 20 points. So that seems like we're locking. Was it locking all doors and locking all windows and doors? That's what they say. Defensively.
I have never.
They say like in basketball, like some of the announcers are like, okay, and they're locking all windows and doors.
Oh,
like
locking.
You can't,
okay.
locking.
Locking. I was like, what? I have never heard that phrase. Never heard of locking in general.
locking. No, locking all windows and doors. So this was a complete performance that we should be proud of, and hopefully is now the standard. Or hopefully can build off of it, continue to build off it, I should say.
Yeah, and I mean, the announcers mentioned that one of the adjustments that I think has played a big role in our defensive renaissance, if you will, which is Trey Williams taking on the center defensively, which realistically, I think it's just whichever is the better of the two posts is probably what his role is going to be. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be center versus four, but as we talked about when we were trying to figure out what the ideal matchup was for our front court, Joe Reese is a good fit for a four.
Yeah, they said it in the beginning of the broadcast, and it resonated with me. I wrote it down myself. Trey Williams has been playing so well defensively lately, and we know Joe Reese, that's kind of his weakness. That's why he doesn't play as many minutes as he probably could. But Joe Reese can move his feet pretty quickly to guard the four if they're slightly quicker. Like Joe Reese can keep up with that guy, and as long as he's not involved in the pick and roll constantly, defending the pick and roll, I think Williams defending the five or whoever the bigger big man is on the opposing team. I really like that adjustment by Dambrot.
Yeah, and the guards are all doing really well on ball as they have, but also they're not getting lost in those in
the rotation. Yeah, the rotations have been better the last two games. Yep.
So I don't know if that was necessarily an adjustment or just really
could be focus. Yeah, who knows?
But that has been a consistency through the past two games now, and I do think that's really helping. The other things that I noticed since we were talking about the bigs, Austin Rotroff dominant in his limited minutes, and David Dixon getting quite a few minutes in this one after we thought that he might not have a role really for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I went on my theory last week about Rotroff getting 20 minutes, assuming that Dixon is out of the rotation at this point. And what do you know? Dixon played 11 minutes in this game, which I was totally happy with. I'm happy to be wrong if David Dixon's involved. And he played well. I mean, David Dixon had 2 steals, 3 blocks in this game in 11 minutes of play, 5 defensive rebounds. Like you said, Rotroff dominant on offensive boards, all 5 of his rebounds, offensive rebounds, and those like 3 in succession at the end of the first half. It was just like, I could see the GM coach just going. I think he called a timeout right afterwards.
Well, he yelled at a sub to get into the baseline immediately after the second one. And then the third one happened, and he was just like, "You're not even
Livid.
going to get in."
Yeah,
And
so livid.
yeah, and I watched it with my dad. The end of the first half, talked about your theory as to why he should probably start, and he said after that performance, well, he definitely utilized most of those 2 minutes there to prove that he should get more time. And
Thank you, Austin. Thank you. I personally thank you.
and I didn't mention this yet, but Rochoff actually got a bit of a hot streak too offensively. He had some highlight dunks in this one.
Oh yeah. 4 for 4 from the field, scored 8 points in 12 minutes. I think that I went over that last week. He's just been averaging 12 minutes. That just seems 6 minutes a half, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he had a really nice touch in particular in the second half off of Jimmy Clark off of Jimmy Clark pass, like a little dish. Jimmy Clark loves those little.
Yes, he does.
He drives in the lane and then he dumps it off to the big, and they do a quick either dunk or hook shot. I love that pass.
Yeah, and the announcers actually made a joke about that Rochoff was really testing his range with that hook shot.
Right. It was a full. He wasn't 2 feet away. It was 5 feet.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, watch out.
More than double. Yeah. But he played really well. Seriously.
Yeah, he and Dixon both played well in their minutes, and Reese and Williams. Even though you touched on it, Williams statistically may not have showed out, but anybody who watched this game saw that he was integral to this dominant performance.
Yeah, Williams he put up an egg in points, but 3 blocks. His one-on-one defense was spectacular. Even if he didn't have the blocks, I would still say they played really well. Only had 2 rebounds, but yeah, the one-on-one defense was more important, and against a good big man.
Arguably the best in the A10.
Yeah.
So
when he wasn't walking.
Right. Which he did frequently in this game, and was called for it.
Yeah. That's the important part to you, is that they were calling it all day. Didn't matter how often he did it, because he did it a lot, and they weren't afraid to blow the whistle.
Right, but I mean, hey, if you're allowed to walk, you go ahead and walk. Why not?
This ain't the NBA, okay? You didn't make it yet, okay?
Yeah, I'm trying to look at all the other notes here, just make sure I didn't touch. Well, we haven't talked about it yet. Day and Tevin Brewer. I mean,
oh yeah,
really coming on strong offensively, those two, the past few games. And they're not forcing anything. They're not taking bad shots. And they're both facilitating the ball really well. Tevin may not be getting the assist numbers in this one, but it still felt like he was keeping the ball moving throughout. Our offense has just looked so much better passing the ball.
Yeah, and Tevin's handles are so tight, and they talk about it on the broadcast. I don't really look into the numbers, because I know he's just like first in them in assist to turnover ratio. He just doesn't turn the ball over. And like you said, he didn't get a lot of assists, but this was his signature. He was probably his best game of the season. Like, is that even an argument? At least shooting the ball.
No, I mean, this was probably his best game as a Duke.
I mean, yeah, Brewer shot 7 of 10 from the field, 3 or 4 from 3, and had 17 points in this game.
And this is the player that Dambrot was kind of expecting, and he had that appendectomy before the season started, which threw everything off. But yeah, I can see why
Dambrot. And the shoulder sprain that supposedly isn't going away all season. Yeah. I mean, let's just say he's still dealing with the shoulder sprain, but still scored 17 points.
And looked great doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, really happy to see those two.
I think I want to just talk a little bit more about Day. Brewer played well, but this was one of my favorite. Go ahead. What?
I'm never going to complain about hearing about Day.
Okay. You don't mind me interrupting, talking, sucking Day a little bit?
Go right.
But seriously, I loved Day's shot selection in this game, and he didn't shoot too much. We've seen some games where he's shooting 15, 16, as high as like 18 shots, which is probably too much. if we're being honest. And he shot in this game in 31 minutes, 6 of 10 from the field, shot efficiently, 2 of 4 from three, got to the line 4 times, 6 of 8 from the line, which I've been harping on all season long. So he scored 20 points, but he scored 20 points in an efficient fashion. And I loved every shot that he took. So I like this game more than the first game I watched, which was his 26-point performance, I think his season high. This was like, I think this is the perfect version of Day. And he had 7 assists in this game.
Yeah.
Operated in the pick and roll brilliantly.
7 assists, good defense throughout this game. This was, we've talked about the game being complete as a whole. This was definitely a complete game by him.
No doubt.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about it yet. Consistent play throughout this game as well. There weren't any bad runs or monstrous runs by either team, really. It was just Duquesne kind of consistently playing better.
They built that lead, 3 at a time. It was at 5, and then a few minutes went by, and then all of a sudden it's 7, then 8. Yeah, and then it just steadily increased by the minute.
Yeah, and usually there's one run that scares you. That, oh man, maybe we lose track. That did not happen at all in this game.
No, never was worried really. And in the second half, it was still a relatively close game. The early in the second half was, I forget what the halftime
I think
31-23.
Like yeah.
So
8 points, and that was after Day made the very tough layup shot.
Yep.
So that was a great way to end the half. And then second half, we played even better than we did in the first half from a score perspective.
That's when we really got away with it.
Yeah, and George Mason, for whatever reason, we've only played them 3 times since Dambrot got here, but we've beaten them all 3 times, and they've had different coaches, very different rosters. It just seems like they can't quite match up with Duquesne since Dambrot got here.
I'm fine with it. I'm personally okay with that.
Yeah, if we could make that more of a norm throughout the rest of the 8
times. Yeah, let's build on how many teams that happens with.
That'd be great.
This was something I wrote down in the second half. Just a funny sequence of events. It was at the 10-minute mark when Tevin passed to Trey Clark for the alley-oop, and he missed it.
Yeah.
Then George Mason gets they get the ball after that, going in transition really hard. Trey Clark hustles back, steals the ball, plucks it right from behind, just like he had no idea he was behind him. And then passes it to Tevin. Tevin shoots a wide open 3. He misses. That was the one miss that he had. Then Joe Reese somehow he rebounds the ball and also passes it to RJ Gunn right underneath the basket. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Just like a crazy, I don't know. I just thought that was like a fun basketball, like 30 seconds that just like so many different things happened in that span.
And man, doesn't that just tell you how much of a better athlete Trey Clark is than seemingly everybody else on the floor? That he misses a dunk and then is the person to race back and get the steal on to stop the break.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's what you want to see.
Unreal.
Not a lot of guys do that. So you need to commend a guy who has that type of hustle.
Yeah, and he might be the best athlete that Duquesne's had from a guard standpoint.
His first step getting to the lane, that's why he's able to get there so easily. His first step is just unreal. And then the reflexes and intuition. He reminds me a lot of Matisse Thybulle, who just got traded to Portland. I hope he does well. I hope he finds a 3-point shot, because that small, I'm going to go off a little bit of a tangent on Thybulle right now, because that small forward spot was open for him to take if he got a 3-point shot, and just never could.
He never did.
And he also doesn't dribble like Trey Clark does.
No. Trey Clark, a better version of Matisse Thybulle.
College version, yes. If we're okay.
We'll see.
I don't even know college version. I know Matisse was a beast at Washington.
Yeah.
And was like all defense and stuff, which Trey Clark should be all defense by the end of an A10 minimum.
Yeah, that was another tweet that
yeah
went somewhat viral, where there's no world where he is not on the A10.
You don't exclude the steal leading A10 player. Like, you just don't do that. And if you watch the games, he does more than just steal the ball. I mean, I wish I could find deflections as a stat freelancing, online. I'm sure there's
but forget about
ESPN and all those people.
Just look at the best guard coming into the games against Duquesne versus how they do against Duquesne, and realize it's because they get shut down by that man right there.
You wanted to say Pittsburgh Steelers so bad.
I did, and I resisted.
I saw it. I literally saw it. I know you so well.
Let me see what else I have for this. We already talked about Dixon getting some minutes. Day in his post game, he didn't say it. He gave really politically correct answers and coach speak for a lot of his post game press conference answers. But it really comes back to me that I think he finally got his confidence back, and that's really what has changed. Really, second half of the Loyola game on, which now we're on game 5 or 6 since then. So
I think 4 or 5, not 6. But yeah,
I think the next one's 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel strongly that he's gonna finish out this season strong, and can't wait to see what he does in A10 tournament play. I think this team's gonna be dangerous, but I'm getting way ahead of myself.
One game at a time. We got St. Bonaventure next,
and we've got a war of a game to focus on shortly.
Yep.
Let's see.
The only other things from the game, just like stats that I found: 13-0 in the Duke's favor in fast break points in this game.
Yep.
Which makes sense, because then the next stat is 25-13 in points off turnovers in favor of the Dukes. So that shows that we scored off of our defense, which you don't need to shoot 50% from 3 to have a great offense. You can do that off of defense as well. So those were just things that stuck out to me.
And we did lose the rebounding battle by 1, but we have rebounded so much better defensively these last 2. I'm always saying these last 2 games. It's very obvious. Every facet of our team has played much better in the last 2 games.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll just, unless you have something else, this is the last thing I'll say about this game. I like this win a lot more because we were average on offense, shot 46% from the field as a team, shot 37.5, which I think is exactly on our average on at least an A10 play. Didn't shoot that well from the line, 50%. So didn't have to totally shoot the lights out to win by over 20 points in this game. It shows that our defense has really improved over the last 2 games. And if we can keep this up, this can be pretty close to, I won't say a complete team, but a lot closer than we were.
Yeah. And I mean, analytically, we've gotten a lot better defensively in A10 over this run that we've had here. And I think that's going to really factor into our chances of winning the whole thing.
I have the stat up in front of me. I'm going to ask you what you think. I have the defensive efficiency in conference play only, where we rank in the A10. This is per KenPom. Where do you think we rank in defensive efficiency? This is as of, we're recording February 10th, so Friday. And I looked these up yesterday, so I guess they're as of
February 9th. 6th.
Third.
Are you kidding me? Defense?
I'm not kidding. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And fourth in so that's KenPom's. He does an adjusted efficiency rating, so that's not regular offensive and defensive rating. So, which to Ken Palm is more accurate. And then we're 4th per basketball GM in defensive rating.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that shocking?
We really have a chance to do something here, Alec.
And this is a key stat, which will be important in the St. Bonaventure game. We're first in opponent 2-point field goal percentage in the A10, opponent field goal percentage in the A10 at 46%.
Wow.
So yeah, I said it. There's a good defensive team in here if we just concentrate off the ball, don't give up offensive rebounds. It's finally showing.
Well, definitely. If we're third after 2 good games, I mean, man, oh man.
That's just conference play. That's conference play, but that's still a lot of games. I mean, what are we, 12 games into the conference play or something?
Let me see. We
11.
are 11.
6-5, so we're 11, yeah.
Wow. No, I mean, for Dambrot, for his 500th win, he could not have possibly asked for a better.
That's true. That's a good point. What a way to earn that 500th win.
Yeah, no, that was perfect. He got time to celebrate with his starters on the bench before the game ended. Like that was, man,
Cool moment.
You cannot ask for a better win, really. Wow. So yeah,
I really threw you for a loop with that stat.
Listen,
that's why I look up these stats, because I want to throw someone for a loop, and I don't know if the listeners are thrown for a loop.
I am just
so it's good to hear it from you.
I'm just so thrilled because A10 Twitters talk about how important being a strong defensive team is for your chances of winning the A10 tournament in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, we really have a shot. Which like I knew, but wow, the numbers are telling you that it's true. It's not just like my optimism coming in. Oh, that's great to hear. All right. Let's touch on the Bonnies before I get into our topic of the week that was posted by a person on the Duquesne chat forum. We'll get to that after we touch on the Bonnies in our rematch game against them.
Yep. So real quick, I apologize if I'm repeating. They won't be exact stats because a lot of games have gone on between the last time we played the Bonnies, but I don't remember what I talked about the first time if I even previewed the Bonnies. I don't remember because I don't always do a preview. Anyway, Bonnies are good defensive team, pretty average on offense, so that's the key to look in on. In conference play, this is per Ken Palm. They're 4th in opponent effective field goal percentage at 47%. But this is the biggest strength to their defense. This next stat is they're 1st in opponent 3-point percentage at 27.7% out of the A10, but that ranks 7th overall in the country. Obviously, one of our strengths is three-point shooting. So that's something that I'm going to be looking towards, hopefully in favor of the Dukes. Hopefully we can still create open shots. So it's something to look at. And then lastly, this is the biggest difference between one team's strength and another team's weakness, is the difference between the Bonnies on offense. They ranked 307th in the country at 2-point field goal percentage. So not good. And then Duquesne actually ranks pretty well on defense. They rank 60th in 2-point defensive field goal percentage at 46.8%. They actually both, it's the same percentage on both sides, offensively and defensively.
So 46% is what they're shooting. There's no
right, right. That's not how that works, but yeah. But that's like I said, the biggest difference between one team's weakness and another team's offense. So that's something that I'm going to be, hopefully that's in favor of the Dukes.
Yeah, and I did look into some of their individual player stats to see if they have one true marquee scorer on their team over the season.
Yeah,
I think Banks and Luke destroyed us in our game against them earlier this season. both of those guys are averaging like just over 10 points per game, and neither are really shooting that efficiently either,
Mm-hmm.
which really makes me think that we have a good chance of
And
getting,
we're at home.
yeah, and we're at home, which, I mean, if you've been following the Bonnies this year, Bonnie's at home versus Bonnie's away, two completely different teams.
Duquesne as well. Sorry.
Not
Sorry.
anymore.
No, you
It's
continue.
changed, Alec. It's changed. The GW game changed everything. How many times do I have to tell you? I I cannot possibly feel better about the game tomorrow, which
Oh,
for
wow.
you listeners is tonight, or today.
Today, yeah.
I I'm
Wow.
ready.
You
I'm
feel
ready.
that good.
I'm ready for war, Alec. I am ready. Bonaventure is, like, realistically, Dayton should be our rival. Bonaventure is our rival. I've I've watched so many Bonaventure games that have come down to heartbreak for one versus the other. We've been on we've been on the better hand very few times. I'm feeling great about our
Wow.
chance of getting through.
The fact that I don't know,
I
you
understand.
almost feel like you're jinxing it. That's what I feel.
I understand.
I'm in vibe mode because of the Super Bowl, so I don't want to, and you know that very well.
I'm not talking anything
You
about
know that very well. We could probably talk about that later, but I mean, I feel confident. I feel confident. I don't know if I feel great because of the way we played them the last time we played. But like you said,
our offense is
it's different
different.
home
Our
court.
defense is different. We're on home court. We've never looked more focused. We've got different assignments for these players on who they're covering. And we realistically
I
match
just
up.
don't want to overreact to the last two games that we
I
played. I
get
know
that, but
they're good.
it really has been a progression of the past like 5 games. Realistically, it's not just been the
That's
last.
true. That's true. That's
This is
true.
this has been a gradual development. Dambrot has made this team improve defensively slowly throughout this season. This team has actually gotten better as the season goes on, which cannot be said about every basketball team. As much as you want that to be true, this is how it's supposed to go. Your team is supposed to look better and better as the season goes on.
Yeah.
Very rarely is the case. This
No,
is
I agree with you. I'm just saying I think we're gonna win, but
I
you went over the top.
Alec, this is how I go.
That's fine.
I ride the highs. I ride the highs to unforeseen dreams, and right now I'm feeling it.
Oh
Uh,
wow. So the way I'll just say real quick, what do you think the spread is in this game? I was curious going into it after you just
I'm,
talked about that.
I'm gonna say 5.5.
Oh wow, you're really close. 6.5
All
in
right,
favor of the Dukes.
all right.
I thought it would have been closer, so okay.
Yeah, no, I'm
It's a
feeling
good
good.
sign. It's a
I'm
good
feeling
sign.
good, and and you know what the reason I'm feeling good about is because we have Coach Dambrot as our head coach. We have the Dambrot
What a
that
segue.
I trust.
What a segue.
In Dambrot, we trust. Uh, and there was a topic: who's the next Duquesne coach? Because Dambrot's days are numbered. Essentially, was the theme of that post on the Duquesne chat forum. We got to find somebody else because Dambrot hasn't brought us to the NCAA tournament yet. Well, folks, in the past 45 years, no other coach has. So that's pretty unrealistic expectation to
Facts.
put on a guy. I went through every coaching performance and I picked out the 500 or better win loss season.
Just to be clear, what was the forum about? It was about
Oh, it was
should
literally it was
it
literally a
it
post
was
about
should Dan Broad be the head coach anymore?
like that we should be looking for a next head coach.
Just want that to be clear. That's what we're talking about here.
That was the forum that was posted. Yes.
Yeah.
So I went through the history of Duquesne's head coaches. There have been 3 that realistically can be viewed as successful head coaches in the past 45 years. Starting with the one from 45 years ago, Mike Rice. He had 4 seasons as Duquesne's head coach, went 3 for 4 in 500 or better seasons. was fired after his one losing season, where the university cited differences in philosophy and a renewed emphasis on academic achievements by athletes as the reason why he was let go. In his first 3 seasons, he went 500 at 13-13, but only 2-8 in conference play. So a rough start, but it was his first year. Second season, 18-10, 7-3 in conference play, tied for first in the EAA conference. And then
EA Sports. Sorry.
Went to the NIT, made it to the second round. Third season, 10-3 in conference play, 20-10 overall, tied for first. Went to the NIT, lost in the first round. And then fourth season, losing record, let go.
Not too shabby.
No, but the guy that followed him only had one season or he coached 7 seasons. Only one had a 500 or better record at 15-14, 9-9 in conference play, 5th in the conference, no postseason performance in his best season. Jim Sadolin, for all you 1985-86 season followers. John Carroll followed him up, had 6 seasons to coach, only one 500 or better record. 1993-1994 season, where they went 17.
I remember it well.
17-13. I was just born watching them.
I was not alive.
567 win percentage, 8-8 in conference, tied for third, NIT second round. I will say that the year following Mike Rice is when we joined the Atlantic 10, which I think the EAA basically transformed into. So we've been in the Atlantic.
Do you know what that stands for? I'm just curious.
I'm guessing Eastern Athletic Association or something along those lines.
That sounds really good. Yeah. I think you got it spot on.
I might have, but I really didn't look it
up. Sorry to put you on the spot there.
It's all right. So I feel pretty good about that guess.
Yeah, so do I.
We didn't have a winning record for the next few coaches, and then Ron Everhart came to be. He and Mike Rice are the only 2 coaches I'd put in the same category as Dambrot. Ron Everhart, 6 seasons as head coach at Duquesne, 5 of them at 500 or better for the overall record. The first being 17-13, 7-9 in conference, 10th in the conference. So even though there was a winning record, the conference play kind of shows what the actual record results were.
Right.
21-13 in the 2008-2009 season, definitely his best season as a coach. 618 winning percentage, 9-7 in conference, tied for 5th, and made the NIT, lost in the first round. But NIT in the modern era for Duquesne, a rarity.
Yeah. You said 9-7 in conference play?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not even. I mean, it's good. It's above
fine.
500 for sure.
Yeah. The following season, he went 16-16, 7-9, made the CBI first round, finished 8th in conference play that year. 2010-2011, his second best year. This was also one of the TJ McConnell years. 19-13 as overall record, just under 600 win percentage, 10-6 in conference play, finished 4th in the conference. Arguably the best A10 season in the past 40 years, because outside of Mike Rice, really that was probably our best season in conference play.
Yeah.
Made the CBI quarterfinal. So that's the tournament right below the NIT that you have to pay to play in. 2011, 2012, his final season as our head coach, went 16-15, 7-9 in conference, tied for 9th. And then following that season, there was a transfer of the best players, including TJ McConnell. And also there were some major academic issues, which played a direct role in how much money Duquesne got from the conference, because it's set up where you have to do so well academically to get money in, and they did so poorly that it was affecting the split of the conference money. That was the main reason why he was let go. That is the coach that people say is better than Dambrot. So I did a very deep dive into him versus Dambrot.
Clearly.
Jim Ferry was the coach in between the two. Boy, oh boy. 5 years as a head coach, one season at 500 or better. It was at 500, 17-17.
This was when we were in school.
Yep. 2015,
unfortunately.
2015-2016 season. Tied for 10th in conference play. So just to show how strong that 17-17 was. Made it to the CBI quarterfinal, though. So did do well there.
Never forget.
And then 2017-2018, Dambrot was hired. Goes 16-16. His first season, basically matching Jim Ferry's best season. 7-11 in conference play, tied for 10th. Second season, 2018-2019. Duquesne goes 19-13 with a 594 winning percentage, which it was Ron Everhart's second best season ever. Had that same win percentage. He went 10-8 in conference play, tied for 6th. Elected not to participate in the CBI because that's not what Dambrot came here to do. He didn't come here to play in CBIs. No joke, they turned down the invitation to that tournament. The following season, 2019-2020, they were 21-9 entering the A10 tournament, and COVID hits. The season is canceled. They were tied for 5th at 11-7 in conference play, a 700 winning percentage. They were NIT bound at the very least.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that.
That team had the potential to run the table in the conference tournament.
Well, that we should acknowledge that was Dayton's also best year. I think they were number 1 in the country.
But at that time, the A10 had a streak of like 10 years where the number 1 seed in the tournament has not won the conference tournament. And I think that's still active. I still think the number 1 seed, just for whatever reason, has a curse where they do not win the conference tournament.
Okay, sure.
Which is why our conference has consistently had more than one bid throughout all of these years. Then the following season, COVID shortened, and you'll see by the record that it was really shortened. We went 9-9. We played 18 total games, 7-7 in conference play. Just very disappointing, very mediocre season. And
I wouldn't say very. I mean, like you said, it's like a third of the season normally. So
yeah, finished 9th in the conference. Meh. Following season, not even going to get into that.
We can ignore. We all know. We all know.
I haven't talked at all about any seasons that were under 500 for any of these coaches. So just throwing that out there as well. This season, we are 16-8, 667 win percentage, likely going to be better than that. 6-5, tied for 6th at the moment. This season is another one where we very easily could be NIT bound if the season goes as I'm now expecting.
Yeah, it's a reasonable goal for sure.
So realistically, he'd be, if we make the NIT again, he'd have 2 seasons worthy of the NIT and 1 CBI, which would better Ron Everhart and be better than, in theory, than Mike Rice's 4 seasons where he made the NIT twice and no other postseason play. Along with those numbers, he's doing so in an era where players transfer at will, where he's bringing more national attention to Duquesne than has been since the 70s when we were a powerhouse.
That matters a lot.
And he's doing it when we were at our lowest as a program, where the history was not factoring in. I argue Dambrot is by far the best coach we've had of the past 45 years, not counting those 70s years where obviously that was the prime.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to argue. You have to look at college sports in general, similar to the Premier League. I feel like there's just clear tiers of where you are in the overall division. And as Duquesne alums and Duquesne basketball fans, we should be happy with what Dambrot has done over his tenure as Duquesne coach.
I don't think there's anybody from a national perspective who views Duquesne worse or even equal to what they were 10 years ago as they are right now. I think he has clearly improved the value of a Duquesne basketball program.
And I think that's the first step, right? Like this is a really long, or could be a really long process. And increasing the value, increasing the way you're looked at as a program, that's the first step. And I think, like you said, I think he's done that.
Yeah. And I mean, in expectations based of who the next coach should be, if you do a next coach, I don't see how he's going to be able to continue this as flawlessly as Dambrot has at building the program up. Now, obviously, there is a clear head coach in waiting candidate on the staff currently with Drew Joyce, but I don't think Dambrot's ready to retire anytime soon with how special this team has looked and the fact that, once again, these players, basically the entirety of the core of these players, will be returning next year if Dambrot's on staff.
Yeah, I I don't have a lot of other insight. You did a lot of research on this, and that was a good job. You outlined it well. The only like little tidbit that I thought was fun that I've heard in the past, I listened to so I still kind of listen to JJ Redick podcast. Um, and so I listened a lot when he was on the Sixers, right? And then obviously he's retired now, and I kind of just listened to the guys that he interviews that I think are interesting. And so the one was this was about probably a year ago, maybe 9 months ago. He had Tim Legler on, which to you and me is a ESPN analyst about the NBA. But it was actually a really fascinating interview because Duquesne was he really outlined that he wanted to be a coach really, really badly. But he's been in TV for so long that basically he couldn't even really get an interview. And the only team that interviewed him was Duquesne. I can't remember what year it was, but I thought about him like, and what are your thoughts about Tim Legler as a person just right off the bat? Like, what do you think about him?
I mean, he seems like a good guy.
Just like a nice guy, right? Like
Yeah.
he's a handsome dude, really nice. But in this podcast, I recommend some of the listeners to listen to that podcast because he came out like he sounded totally different than he does on TV. You could hear the competitiveness in his voice. He really like wanted to win. You could hear how much he wants to coach. He still wants to coach. Like all of his kids are now in college or grown up, and he doesn't need to worry about the family aspect anymore. I just thought it was like really interesting, and not even his alma mater, which is LaSalle, right in my backyard. They didn't even want him, like wouldn't even interview him. Or maybe they did. It was either Duquesne was either the only school that interviewed him or LaSalle and Duquesne did. But I'm pretty sure it was just Duquesne. I
LaSalle,
just thought that was interesting. What's that?
LaSalle, by the way, as of this recording, the hottest A10 team with 3 wins in a row.
God damn it, Fran Dumpy. He's
Duquesne, 2 wins in a row. So we have a chance to be the hottest team in the A10 shortly.
I apologize. I should know his name, but fun fact, the last LaSalle's coach from last year, do you know his name? You probably don't. But
no.
Either way, he is my mom's neighbor. He lives like across the street, and they fired him, but he still had years on his contract, so he's still getting paid.
Best job in America. Fired coach.
Yeah, exactly. And then Fran Dunphy got hired this year, and I was like, oh god, Fran Dunphy's like he could die on the court any moment.
He's turned the program around somehow.
I guess 3 wins in a row is turning the program around.
Well, they're 5-6 now on the season, which I mean for LaSalle.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a fun fact. But yeah, that's the only thing I can add about the Dambrot thing. I don't necessarily think that we should hire Tim Legler. I just thought that was interesting. And when I heard him in the podcast, he really came across as like a super competitive edge that I know JJ Redick has. Like he's kind of psycho if you listen to that podcast in competitiveness. And Tim Legler gave me the same vibes. So, which is, you absolutely want that in a college head coach.
Absolutely. And you know what? Dambrot definitely has that as well.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. That's just like, this is the only thing I could add to this conversation.
That's fair. Yeah, but in totality, we are a pro Dambrot podcast. I apologize to any listeners who disagree with that. Your thoughts are not welcome here. They just, I'm sorry, they're not based off of the factual reality of what Duquesne is.
That's what you have to think of, is what Duquesne is. Now, a lot of people, we all want to be in the NCAA tournament, but that's going to take a while. I mean, it takes a while to get to a place like that where Duquesne was so low when we graduated from there.
Realistically, Dambrot was too good of a coach for us to even get. We're so lucky that his dad had the connection that he did with Duquesne that brought Dambrot to our college. Because realistically, with how well he was doing at a mid-major program for so long, he should have been able to coach at many better schools for the reputation that Duquesne had at the time that we got him.
Yeah, we were arguably at our lowest.
Yeah, and man, oh man, has he made Duquesne basketball fun to follow outside of last season, which, again, I think I touched on it in the very early episodes of this podcast. He overcorrected for the character issues that formed with the group of players that left the season before. He didn't want to have that headache of a mess again. He's now realized that it's a balancing act between those high character guys and making sure that you have enough talent to compete in the A10 conference. And he's done it in 1 year's time. He's made another team where we have a chance to win the A10 tournament if things continue as they have been.
Yeah, and like you said, double bye potentially is still on the outskirts of the table, but still on the table.
I think we control our own destiny, actually, with that. We have the game against the Bonnies, and then we close out the season against Fordham. So realistically, we have the 4 spot in our grasp, and it's up to us to carry it out.
That feels good. That feels good to know.
Yeah. So, all right, folks, with that, let's go to war. Let's take down the Bonnies.
Go Dukes.
The Dukes are back and now it's time to rise up. Rise up.